Welcome everyone to another episode of Trident Talks. I'm Josh, the founder at Trident, and today I'm very pleased to be joined by Jonathan, who is the co-founder of Cylon Ventures. Jonathan, thanks for joining. Welcome.
Josh, you're welcome. It's nice to be with you.
Appreciate it. Jonathan, I know we've sort of previously discussed this, but what we want to do is bring a kind of series to our YouTube channel and to our kind of podcast sort of audience, really, to interview and speak to kind of partners and founders of VCs within the cyberspace and kind of bring to light how the kind of ecosystem works, particularly in a year like we've had already, as has been well documented. But just understand then the relationship post-funding, as an example, between the partners and the kind of founders of their portfolio companies. So just to start, would you mind kind of giving us a bit of a brief background in terms of who are Cylon, what are you guys, how are you different from that typical Californian VC, so to speak?
Yeah, thanks, Josh. Yeah, happy to give you a bit of background because we are a bit different, I think, to every other venture firm operating, certainly in the cybersecurity domain. The background is that Cylon began as Y Combinator for cyber back in 2015. We ran Europe's first accelerator focused exclusively on cybersecurity startups, addressing what we felt was a real need in the market. Not enough exciting startups coming to market with cyber technology at that time, certainly in the sort of UK and European market. So we built Cylon to serve those founders, ran for 5 years on that model. We invested in and supported well over 100 companies from a base in London and Singapore. Post 2020, we've operated a different model. So Cylon Ventures replaced the accelerator, and Cylon Ventures is an investment company. We invest still in very early stage security technology companies. I'd include risk, resilience, identity, privacy, and another sort of range of technologies which kind of fall under the broad heading of cybersecurity. And we've taken a sort of deliberate approach to invest at the earliest stage in the world's best cyber founders. And we do that alongside people that I know you know already, investors that I suspect you've featured before on your channel, really great teams like 1011 and ForgePoint and Sin Ventures and Teammate in Israel, and many others.
Nice, awesome. I appreciate the introduction. So moving on to the Cylon kind of ventures and the more prevalent as to why we're here today. When you are having conversations, I can imagine a lot of it starts off as just a coffee and a general chat with somebody who's got this concept idea, or maybe has, I don't know, maybe even an MVP stage potentially of their product. But in terms of, if we focus today on the people aspect of that, are you looking at the founding team? Are you looking at kind of what they're discussing or what they're talking to you about in regards to, hey, this is my people plan, this is my roadmap, this is who I'm going to need. That's why I need that X amount of money to build the product, sell the product, etc. What are you kind of, do you have like a focus on the particular people aspect?
Yeah, it's absolutely fundamental and always has been, even during, in fact, absolutely during the accelerator phase of Cylon's operation. The founding team has always been absolutely critical, and still is, right? So the three things that we're obviously interested in are the team, the technology, and the market. And of those three things, at the earliest stage, which is when we typically invest, so we're investors at pre-seed and seed stage, the composition of that founding team, the team's experience, its vision, and critically for us, its ability to inspire others and attract talent is absolutely fundamental. And it's probably the most important factor alongside obviously market and tech, but it's a really, really important factor for us as we consider investing.
Yeah, nice. I suppose having that 5 years of the accelerator behind you, working with founders so closely through that sort of process, you've kind of then come to be quite
I think all venture investors are sort of pattern matchers. I think it's fair to say, and the value of that accelerator experience was, okay, we had 100 120 companies come through our programs in London and Singapore, but we had more than 1,000 applications for those programs. And so that, you develop a feel for the kinds of teams that are likely to succeed, but you've also got data. We have and we've had many data points on the kinds of founding team that succeeds, their backgrounds, the kind of teams that they put together, the range of different complementary skills and experience that makes a good founding team. So yeah, that was extremely helpful, and informs everything we do now as investors.
How this is a bit of a side question really, but I'm really interested to know, how often do you see founding members now, because the industry is a little bit more mature, having already been successful and exited businesses previously? Is that quite common now? We speak to a lot, particularly in the US, right? It was like, hey, I was part of the founding team of Paolo. I was employee number 6 at Qualys. Or is that more common now because the industry is more mature?
That's a really interesting question, because it's a phenomenon that is absolutely part of the early stage scene more broadly. The repeat founder, it's a cliche for a reason. Like, it really is a thing.
Works.
And investors are inclined to support entrepreneurs with a track record, entrepreneurs that have previously been successful somewhere else. To answer your question specifically about cyber, yes, I think that is a feature of the ecosystem in 2023. If looking at the sort of UK landscape, you can see founders emerging from government. You can see founders emerging from earlier successful cyber and security tech companies. There's perhaps not the depth that you might like to see as an investor, but you see it elsewhere. If you look around the Israeli startup scene or the US startup scene, absolutely the case that founders who've previously worked in the large strategic vendors, or even in other smaller but successful startups that have scaled and got to good exits, or have gone public, or have decided to move on and start again. I mean, Ali Patterson from Digital Shadows is a good example of this. He worked for 7 or 8 years building Digital Shadows with James Chappell, and last week announced the seed round for his new company, which is doing kind of security in the generative AI space. And I'd love there to be loads more Ali Pattersons coming out of the UK ecosystem. I think it's still developing. It's not as deep or as mature as Israel in terms of the repeat founder scene, but it's definitely a thing.
They had the checkpoints. They had the early stage, really highly successful businesses. So like in the early 2000s, right, if not late 90s. So I think they've had a couple of years head start, I think, on the UK scene, particularly. Funnily enough, I'm actually talking to Al tonight, just to learn more about Harmonic and what they're doing, and because it's some interesting tech, right?
Great.
Yeah, absolutely. Interesting also that if you look on the other side, to caveat that, if you have a first-time founder, you as a VC are so experienced of kind of wrapping around experience, kind of C-suite or founding members with those people, that it can kind of negate the lack of experience if you put a really strong leadership team with them.
Yeah, I mean, we've got lots of experience working with first-time founders. I mean, that was the whole point of the Cylon Accelerator. It was to give entrepreneurs a platform and to give them the kind of support they couldn't find elsewhere at a time when the market wasn't as mature as it is now. And we deliberately sought out first-time founders, and the program we operated was designed to address their needs. As you're saying, you don't know what you don't know when you're starting a new business, and everything from the kind of legal establishment of that business through the Articles Association, through to early investors, getting the cap table right, hiring practices, and getting, just getting the best talent into your early stage startup. I mean, these things are all critical, and those were the things that we focused a lot of our time on. Now we're operating more like a venture fund. We still think about those things. We're not large investors. We're not operating at the scale that the big funds are operating, and some of those funds have their own talent teams, and they provide operational support in-house for their portfolio companies. We leverage our network. We make sure that we're providing great advice directly to founders, and we're trying to make sure that they have access to the best third-party support through our network or through other investors that we can. Because you're absolutely right, the founder going through this for the first time really does need as much support as possible from their investors, and that's what we endeavor to provide.
That's something they look for, right? Other than just pure capital, it's what advice and who am I bringing on as a partner in the VC, in regards to what can they provide me in support, help, guidance, third-party support, etc.
Yeah, I mean, the best investors will be really thoughtful about what they can offer, what they can provide in addition to capital. But for me, operating where we do, investing really early stage, you're really counting on the talent and the drive and the mission of the founder and the early team that they build around themselves. You're taking you're making a bet on that person, and it doesn't always work out, of course, but it really is an essential part of early stage investing, that you are making a judgment about the leader. And I think maybe we can come on to talk about that. Leadership skills are enormously important in the success of startups, just like any other organization. But the kind of risks involved at the start of a new business, I think, tend to accentuate the importance of good leadership.
Well, accentuates the highs, the lows. Therefore, you need very strong leadership. We'll come on to that in a second. Just moving on to the kind of almost like the final point of this conversation, which is so you've the investment, the kind of term sheet's been signed, everything's good. The VC's been chosen. What's that relationship like between, in regards to the people, the support around the people aspect, with the founder and the partner in the VC? Is it a weekly conversation to, hey, how's your hiring going? Or, hey, do you need a people roadmap built? Or HR and legal support? Like, I appreciate it will differ, but especially at the early stage that you're so familiar with, how much they lean on you, and how open to that kind of advice are they?
I think you sort of answered your question already. It really differs.
Yeah.
And it'll differ from investor to investor and from founder to founder. I can only really speak from our own experience, and we have always, I mean, you'd need to ask our portfolio founders this question, but our aim has always been to be on the side of the founder and to be there when needed for whatever's needed. And that is, it's a very personal relationship. You're, as I was saying before, you're making you're choosing to believe in someone and their ability to create a great company. There's an immediate sort of bond established there, and so we go out of our way. I hope it's fair to say we go out of our way to be supportive on every level, whether that's just being there to act as a sounding board for ideas, to be able to offer constructive, objective advice on all aspects of the company's development, and to be both a recommender of talent and an assessor of talent, where the company is hiring new people is a role that we do try to play, because there isn't anything more critical than getting those early hires right. It is really, really important. Some of those people may move on in due course, as the company is successful and scales. and reaches a certain size, some of those early team members, may want to move on. They might not be suited for that later part of the journey, but it's absolutely vital that they're the right people for that, for those initial hard yards. And you can see companies where that hasn't been the case and it goes wrong. I'm pleased to say that many of the companies we've worked with, lots of the companies in our portfolio, whether it's Immersive Labs or Tessian or Dig Security or Kado Security, they've got great founding teams, and they've built great teams around them.
Yeah, totally agree. Interesting point you make about the right people at the right time. And I saw you smiling because I know I sent the link, but the talk about like the misfits, the builders and the scalers. We see that a lot, and it's actually on the recruitment like later on when let's say, for example, just a scenario, the founding team have been built. We've run out of founder-led kind of hiring and friends of friends, and you go, right, you need to use a third-party agency, regardless who it is. How many times I've seen it, and we made this mistake in the past where we're putting a sales exec from IBM into a startup because that sales exec says, hey, I'm fed up with red tape. I want to work in a fast environment. I want to be kind of a cool, sexy place to work and build it and get my piece of the pie if we do really well. But then very much the reality of being in that kind of that less structured environment hits home. And I think it can the recruitment teams can play a lot, internal and external, their part when it comes to identifying, do we need a misfit right now, and or do we need a builder? Where are we at in our business to bring in the right type of people? And then also, sometimes, can we keep our misfits in the business when we are at Series B, Series C? Because we need constant innovation. Otherwise, the only way to innovate is to acquire businesses elsewhere, right? And how do we kind of find that nice quiet space over there for the innovators and the misfits to kind of do their thing, but then not frustrate the scalers who are like, hey, they haven't updated the CRM on their sales pipeline, and the kind of the day-to-day problems, right? That's I think an ever-going kind of relationship problem and ecosystem of all. How do you get all three of those in the business at the same time, and do you even need them in the business at that time?
It's a great challenge. It's one of the fascinating challenges.
Fun, right?
Of growing a business. You strive to find the right balance, from the founder on, as you say, right person in the right role at the right time. Some people are going to be there for the long haul. Others are going to join for specific reasons, for specific times. And we've seen this ourselves in a number of the companies. I could talk about Worlder, which is fantastic. I'm even repping the company here in my gilet. They brought in a fantastic chief operating officer who'd got experience at a much larger but still kind of fast growing technology company to come in and help them with their next phase of development, because they've reached a real they're at a pace of growth now that they need that person to come in and take them forward. Other companies in the portfolio have grown to that scale where they're hiring executive talent, like you were saying, out of really significant companies, because they want a different challenge at that point, and see that opportunity with a smaller but hugely ambitious and fast growing company. So it's a fascinating challenge. The best founders are, like I was saying before, they are magnets for talent.
Yep.
Now, whether that's through their own network, whether that's working through their investors network, or whether that's working with third-party organizations who've got great networks of their own, I think they exploit all those three things if they're at the top of their game, to make sure they keep getting the right people.
Yeah, absolutely. And a great example, I spoke to a guy yesterday who has just joined a startup in the US. And I said, hey, why them? You've just come from a very successful one. And he said, well, look at the founders, look at their backgrounds. I know it's going to work. The product's obviously got to be amazing, and it's got to be the business ambitious and the plans and stuff. But he was like, I can get behind these two people because I've seen what they've done before and their track record.
And you see that very regularly with the sort of Israel-US relationship. There are some sort of tried and tested sort of pathways for Israeli entrepreneurs who have built a company to a certain scale, and then understand that the sort of the big market opportunity for them is to scale in the US. and they have great networks, and they have, you know, former colleagues, former founders, companies like you were saying that are at larger companies who really specialize in taking companies between particular stages, and those companies link up with those individuals and move to the next stage. I don't think in the UK, at least, we've been quite as good at sort of establishing those pathways to the, you know, the largest international market, which remains the US for most security tech companies. But hopefully that's coming. You know, as more and more successful UK startups reach scale, spin out new founders, found new companies, then, you know, you start to build those connections and those pathways.
Awesome. Well, Jonathan, look, it's been a pleasure to have you on. I hope it's provided some insight to the audience, the followers, the watchers. Appreciate your time. Obviously, you're a very busy man, and I will let you get back to your day. But thank you for joining us and just kind of giving us some advice, some insights, and just a little bit how a VC does work and the kind of relationship between the founders, VCs, the people aspect, and why it's so important.
Josh, it's very kind of you to invite me. Thanks for doing that. Bye.